So, welcome everybody to the AI Conversation podcast. We're joined here today by Michael Conway, a leader in AI and the leader, congratulations, of BTS. The purpose of this podcast is to kind of help more junior individuals, I suppose, and even those who are senior consultants, bridge the gap between those who are technically certified and me and you on the camera. And bridge that gap and understand how to capitalise and utilise AI better with the advancements that keep coming each day. I'm joined by my co-host today, Kavi.
Yes. Hello, my name's Kavi. Just like Harry, I'm a junior consultant here at IBM. And yeah, we're really excited to bring you what's hopefully going to be a great podcast episode today with Michael.
Yeah.
Cool.
And Michael, do you want to just introduce yourself as well, just
Sure.
in case our viewers have been living under a rock?
Right. Hi, I'm Michael Conway. So I lead our business transformation services in IBM Consulting. My heritage is data and AI. I joined as a graduate in 2010, for those that are interested. So yeah, just short of 14 years in the company. If it's interesting, a philosophy graduate by background, so that may well interest, and maybe we can talk about that throughout the podcast
absolutely.
as well. Yeah. Okay, so it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure, thank you.
So yeah, leading on from what you said as BTS lead, congratulations, like I said, on your recent promotion.
Thank you.
Having been through kind of these, you spent 14 years at IBM, what advancements have you seen in AI that have kind of excited you the most about the future and helping clients?
Yeah, I think in my career, there's probably been 3 epochs, I would say. So I joined just as we did the Jeopardy challenge, which probably has gone out of vogue as being quite a cool thing that we did. I think that was 2010 actually, where it was the earliest version of Watson, as was and the use of natural language to break down really tricky problems. It was a phenomenally powerful event, right? IBM are really great at these events. Deep Blue in, I think, 97 with Garry Kasparov, where he beat the world champion at chess, and similarly with Jeopardy in 2010. That behind the scenes was like rooms and rooms of servers. So then the challenge was, how do we commercialize this breakthroughs in NLP and natural language processing into something that we could sell? So throughout probably the next 5 or so years, we were building out Watson as a product, and then it became available as a bunch of APIs. And I think that was sort of epoch. Jeopardy was epoch 1. Then the commercialization of those services was epoch 2, and I would say that's probably like 2015, 16, where we were using Watson and being really successful in quite specific use cases, things like virtual assistants and chatbots and all that sort of stuff. Then Google wrote this paper in 2017 saying, which is called All You Need Is Attention, and that was the birth of what's called the transformer model. And that's where really the genesis of things like ChatGPT and large language models has come from. And that is the next generation of this type of technology, and that's, I would say, maybe epoch 3. What's interesting is we were using these large language models as techniques pretty early on in our team, both from open source ones that we got from Google, like BERT or Roberto, etc., but also from IBM Research. But we were using that as a technique to improve our current projects, sort of probably 2018, 2019 into 2020. And then all of a sudden 22 came around and ChatGPT was born and this massive explosion has happened, right? Yeah. And I think that is what I would call epoch 3. And I think, yes, I think that with all of this technology, it's a function of 3 things coming together: better maths and approaches, more compute, there's just the grunt force that you can put behind things, and thirdly, it's people's awareness. Right, so those 3 things have coalesced in the last couple of years, where the transformer model and large language models as an approach is the better maths. The more compute, you can see NVIDIA's stock price for how important that is, but people's awareness and acceptance that this is a thing they need to be doing. That's what's created the market conditions to make it sticky. So I think that's what's this last epoch that we're currently in is why it's so interesting.
And just building off the back of that, what's kind of the next vision then? So is there such thing as Epoch 4 being built? Or
Yeah, if I knew that, then I would be a very, very wealthy man. I think What's next? I don't know what Epoch 4 is. What I do think is next, maybe in Epoch 3, is the scaling, because the last couple of years we've had loads and loads of experimentation. Right, organisations that we're working with, they have innovation islands, but they're still the barnacle on the ship. How do we change what the ship does, or what the ship is? Does it even need to be a ship, right? So the changing of business models, the changing of what work actually is, and what people do when they go to their place of work. I think that's where we're really going to start scaling, and I think that's what's next for this type of technology.
And just one more kind of question on that. Is that where's kind of Epoch 3 and in the future potentially Epoch 4, whatever that might entail, where's that going to fit in first within industries, within our clients? Where's that first going to kind of penetrate?
So I think it's this idea of whether you're the barnacle or the ship. I think once the technology needs to be in the workflow of the organisation. Right, so we need to rethink with our clients as to what that workflow is. Because at the moment we automate the edges, right? We automate what we can, but actually in the future it should be automation by default with AI, thinking about what needs to be done, and then we put the people around it to make it the best possible thing, right? So this human and technology partnership is flipped on its head, where the humans are augmenting the technology to make sure that we are bringing humanity to these processes. So I think once it's in the guts of a business and actually changing the workflow and the nature of work, I think that's where we'll end up getting to.
Okay. If I could build on that, so you've spoken about how we can work with our clients. Where do you see AI having an impact in some of the world's biggest problems, for example, like with poverty or with climate change? Do you think it's going to have because obviously we talk a lot about clients and maximising value for them.
Yeah.
What about with the world's biggest problem?
So there's a pessimistic and an optimistic view of this, right? So the pessimist view is, whilst the technology is pretty democratic, i.e. there's open access to lots of people, it actually exacerbates the digital divide. So if you have access to digital, then you can use this and you can be more productive. If you don't have access to digital, the divide becomes much wider, right? So that's the pessimist view. So I think there are some table stakes or some fundamentals that we need to get right in terms of equality and equity about digital access. That's the pessimist view. The optimist view is we can start solving problems which we could never have dreamt of solving before. So I was speaking with a CEO of an insurance company, and he said if we could actually forecast weather better, then the whole world changes. Right, because knowing if there's a flood risk, and obviously you have to then overlay all the sort of climate change that's happening at once, but at least in theory, could that be modelled? Yeah. Well, we get people out of harm's way. We protect property, people, and the like, and actually that completely changes the game. And then, if you think about what we're doing today with classical compute, remember the three legs of the stool of how this stuff gets better in terms of computing grunt is a big part of it. Well, now overlay quantum, right? And if we then take an exponential leap in how much we can forecast and how many variables we can deal with, well, could we start predicting really big problems in the world and either hopefully preventing them or at least mitigating them better, right? So if this island's going to end up underwater in however many years' time, well, we can do things to try and stop that, or if we can't stop it, can we move them? Can we move people around and protect people?
Look at Dubai, right? I mean, that's the amount of money that and life that's been lost with that.
What's interesting? I don't know the science behind it. The government are obviously denying that this seedling is it seeding or seedling or whatever. Yeah. Like you don't mess with the weather. It's all I would say. Was it 2 years worth of rain in a day? It's just nuts, absolutely nuts.
So you would say, because one of the things I'm interested in is that obviously when people talk about Gen AI, it's not overly sustainable in the current model, at least in my opinion, in terms of from an environmental point of view, the amount of compute power, as you've spoken about, that it takes to do these things is quite great. So in the long term, how do we, one, decrease that in the long term, is what I'm interested in. Two, is there going to be a certain point where, with this predictive modelling, in terms of the environment and global warming, can we kind of mitigate that? Do you think that's a possibility?
So I think there's a lot to that question to answer. I'll try and unpack some of it. I think one of the value propositions for watsonx in particular actually is that it doesn't purport to have these massive general purpose models. So the OpenAIs and the Geminis of the world is a all-purpose. You can ask it anything. You can ask it about Beethoven's Last Symphony or the latest banking trend, right, and everything in between.
Yeah.
So that is hugely greedy, right, to have a knowledge base effectively of the world. What IBM is doing is saying, have specialist jobs for specialists, or specialist tools for specialist jobs.
Yeah.
Because then when you're doing a specialist job, you only use this slice of it, and then Matt Candy has this brilliant saying that if you're a bank and you want to hire a lawyer, you hire a lawyer, right? You don't hire a lawyer that's a rocket scientist, a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, etc., 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 because the training cost of all of those things is so high. So actually, if you can make it more specialised and more surgical, then you bring down your carbon footprint alongside that. Obviously, over time, things do always get more efficient. I spent some time with the labs, our IBM labs, last month. Basically, the name of the game at the moment is efficiency. So how can we create the same or more with less? Because we can't keep growing the compute footprint, because we are going to hit a logical limit of what we can achieve, right? So it's about efficiency now. And how we get better, I don't know. There's smarter minds in the labs that are working through that at the moment as we speak, I imagine.
Okay, interesting. No, I appreciate that. That's a good point.
We've spoken a lot. I mean, we mentioned about the world's challenges a few moments ago. Going back to the client side of things, could you give an example, or maybe if you can't talk specifically, without naming the client, where have you seen a use case where AI has like completely revolutionised a client or one of their systems?
So the obvious one and the most prevalent one is customer service. For me, anyway. I think there are other options, like HR, our own HR in IBM, right? Ask HR. I know most people on this listening to this wouldn't have been around long enough, but HR used to involve just so many people and so many handoffs and so many documents being shunted from left to right. To move a person from cost center A to cost center B, get sent a 16-page document, click this, click that, click that. Well, now it's just you speak to the bot, right? And 94% of our own queries, so for every 100 queries that go into Ask HR, only 6 of them need human intervention, which is quite something, right? That is quite dramatic. Customer service is similar stories. I've personally delivered the virtual assistants at pretty much every bank in the UK, and we run those services for them, and that has completely changed the cost base of how much it costs to serve their customers, but also improve Net Promoter Score, right? The customer's happiness with the service. So it is this real nirvana, right, where you can take significant cost out, but also improve experience, because normally it's one or the other.
One of the things you touched on before, and I'm really glad you did, because I'm really interested in it, although I don't have too much knowledge in it. I'm sure our viewers might be in a similar boat. Quantum. How does this interlink with our AI, with our watsonx resource? What's the next step?
So health warning, I'm not an expert either. I don't have the quantum ambassador, so I'm not allowed to talk about this stuff. But as long as it's between us. Look, the logical leap that we have to make is, again, back to the 3 things: awareness, better maths, and more compute. Well, if you have an exponential leap in compute, then you would think that you have an exponential leap in what you can understand and how good the AI can be. Right. So if we can match our AI expertise with our quantum expertise and overlay those 2 things, then the potential for an exponential leap in what AI can do is massive.
And why is that? So just for my own knowledge.
So, I'm sure everyone's heard the coin thing with quantum. Have you know?
I actually haven't.
Okay, so sorry if everyone's heard this, but basically a classical computer is 1 or 0, right, in bits and bytes.
Okay.
So it's heads or tails on a coin.
Yeah.
So you can only have one state or another. With quantum, you are a spinning coin. So you are 1 and 0 at the same time.
Okay.
What that means is that the amount of states that you can be in any one point is a factor more of one or the other, which means that the computational power is exponential, literally exponential.
Wow.
Exponential is a word that is overused. This is literally exponential. So things that take, at least in theory, because no one's tested it, but a computing problem that can, so things like forecasting and scenario planning, all this sort of stuff have up to billions of variables. These things with a classical computer can take theoretically tens of thousands of years. Mm-hmm. If you set go on the computer, it would take thousands of years to run.
Yeah.
Quantum, it's now seconds because of that exponential leap.
Wow. Okay.
So if you added that effective compute power to the AI, you would expect exponential leaps in the understanding of what the AI can achieve.
Wow. Okay.
Interesting.
Okay, I see the capability there.
So you talked about IBM's. You said you weren't an expert. You talked a bit about IBM's quantum in terms of Watson, because Harry was saying how they how they work together. What do you think is special about Watson? What's the thing that people can look at and think we want IBM's Watson and not someone says?
Yeah. So I think like we as consulting have to have a view on everything, and we have to be client led with a point of view. So if the client is absolutely sold on something else, then we have to have the skills and capability to help them with that, right? But we do owe it to ourselves to make sure that they understand why Watson X is differentiated. And I think I've touched on some of it already, but the multi-model and the specialist model for specialist task is one thing. The indemnity that we offer, so the models that we provide, we also provide, every time we release a model, we release a white paper with it that says, here's where the data's from. This is either our data that we own the copyright, or we've open sourced with this license. So there's no, the litigation risk which the other models have is far less, if any. And it's also this open platform, which means that it can run anywhere, so you can run it on whatever cloud. It doesn't need to be IBM Cloud. But you can also access all the many models on Hugging Face, which is the sort of the third-party repository for these things. So I think the openness, the indemnity, the multi-model approach, but also, and lastly, and probably most importantly, is the governance. So since governance got released in December, I want to say, certainly Q4, the interest in Watson has exploded, because what that does, and it's back to the scaling point of, okay, it's fine to experiment in the, being the barnacle or the ship, but actually if you want to be in the guts of an organization, you need to be able to govern this stuff and understand, your model inventory, how many things have you got and what stage of the life cycle are they in, who's approved them, who's last touched them, what data's in them, are they drifting from their original intention, are they regulatorily compliant? So, the EU AI Act got printed about a month ago. Well, if you're a bank within the EU's grasp, you're going to have to prove that you're compliant within these regulations, right? So governance is a massive part of that. And I think with that sort of basket of benefits, I think Watson does stand out. We just need to get really good at telling that story.
Yeah. And you talk about governance and how important it is to us at IBM, but maybe outside of IBM, do you think AI in general is growing and outgrowing the governance surrounding it and the accountability surrounding it?
Are we in a Wild West? I think probably yes. I actually think major organisations are pretty mature actors. Mm-hmm. They understand the risks around these things. Also, consumers are pretty mature in understanding using these things, right? It's a pretty mature ecosystem out there. I think where we haven't yet reached as a society is getting this AI in the real guts of an organisation and letting it make decisions and all that sort of thing. I think that's where we're going to have to really think, is credit risk. If I'm going to lend you money, am I going to be fair in how I assess that risk, right? It's those sorts of things which are challenging.
I mean, a few weeks ago we were talking about, was it Harry found a story about an LLM advising doctors, and even then, like, you can't, it's a model at the end of the day. You can't tell someone who's studied medicine for all these years to listen to a model that's just come out. So I think,
when does that flip point come? That's
I think, question. But I think if you could choose as a patient, a doctor that has all their own training, or the same doctor with all their own training plus a tool that can tell them stuff they might not know, I would always choose the second one, right? Because this augmenting the humans, that we are raising the bar of everyone, I think is a positive thing. But then we get into interesting debates around what's human nature, right? So things like self-driving cars. If a self-driving car knocks someone over, that's unacceptable. Right, but we accept it every day. It happens every day with humans. Do we ban all humans from driving cars? No. If it was proven that self-driving cars are safer, but they still knock over humans, right? So I don't know. Humans driving, I'm making up numbers. Yeah, humans driving knock over 20 people every day. Self-driving car knocks over 2 people every day. That's an exponential decrease in people getting knocked over. Would we accept it? I don't know. Right? Because there's something about a machine doing these things which makes us feel uncomfortable.
You're right, there is a stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
So I think what we need to overlay on all of this is human nature and what we accept as humanity as well.
And do you think that will change over years?
No idea. And this is back to, I studied philosophy, right? There's a very, very famous thought problem or thought experiment, I should say, and I would look it up, would be my encouragement. It's called the trolley problem or the tram problem. Right, so there's various flavours of this, but there's a group of 10 children tied to a train track, and on the other train track there's one old person, right? The train is heading towards the children, and if you pull the lever, then it flips and hits the old person, right? But the whole argument is once you've pulled the lever, you have taken agency, you've taken ownership, and you are actively killing someone rather than letting it just happen. But what's better, right? Is it better to have the children hurt, or is it better to take control and move? So I think and we're making all these decisions all the time, right? So back to the self-driving car issue, if you were driving, you can imagine that scenario playing out, right? I could drive here and something really bad happens, or I can drive here and something even worse happens. Well, how do you program that into a car to know which one to take? Yeah. So someone's going to get hurt either way, but at what level? So you get to all these interesting
I think I've heard that theory
problems, right? So anyway, probably going off a tangent.
I don't want to stop this, but I'm conscious of time. Firstly, big thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
For our viewers and for our interest, really interested here. What's your one-liner on AI? In terms of, when you take it to a client, when you try and sell it, when you try and engage people with it, how do you bring them on board?
So I think that we're pushing against open doors at the moment because everyone, to the awareness point, everyone wants this stuff and is aware that the risk of not being on the train, right? I think the way that we have to position ourselves is the responsible custodians of AI and AI for business and AI in the enterprise, because building your your holiday itinerary on ChatGPT is very, very different to taking medical decisions or financial decisions, right? So that the ChatGPT has whetted people's appetite, but how do we bring that to the enterprise? Excuse me, in a safe, transparent, responsible, and scalable way. So I think that's our sort of unique selling point. One thing I would encourage everyone to do, right, this is a nascent and new market. Have opinions, be curious, and read around the topic. Right, don't expect to learn all of this stuff in a classroom where someone's going to read you a book that says this is that. For early professionals, this is your world to take, right? So be entrepreneurial, be curious, and build this world that you want to be a part of, because it's the next generation which is going to take this forward. So this is not a settled debate by any stretch. We are starting what I think is a start of a new industrial revolution, right? What do you want that to look like? It's in your gift.
Super. And thank you so much again, and thank you for viewing our podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.